Good afternoon to you, Chris.
Good afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for joining us. Can I ask you, first question, let's go straight to it. Should the government bring in more powers to basically ban the protests we've seen on our streets every fortnight, often even more than that in the last 2 years, which can claim to be pro-Palestinian, but appear to be more pro-Hamas? Should they bring in more powers and should they ban those protests?
Yes, I think they should bring in more powers. I do actually support what the Home Secretary said yesterday. Where I agree, I will say so. I think introducing a so-called cumulative impact test, where you look at the impact the protests are happening if they go on week after week after week after week, the impact on public order, excuse me, and also the potentially intimidatory impact on other communities. I think it is reasonable that that gets taken into account when the police decide whether or not to let these marches go ahead. So yes, I do support that.
What about women, for instance, protesting week in, week out about trans activists taking women's and girls' rights and putting their safety at risk? What if they claimed, the trans activists claimed, we're being intimidated, and there was a protest again and again? Couldn't the same powers be used by a Labour government? Indeed, let's face it, a Tory government or any other government too, to stop those protests going ahead? Isn't this a slippery slope? Isn't this a worry?
Well, look, I think you've got to obviously look at the impact the marches or any protest actually have. And as I understand it, this is a decision and a judgment made by the police in the first instance, not by the government.
Do we trust the police's judgment? Do we trust
Well, it's probably better to have it not done by politicians. It's probably better to have it done not by politicians for obvious reasons. But obviously, as whoever's deciding, as they look at any individual set of circumstances, as is the case now, actually, they've got to obviously weigh up the disruption being caused, or any intimidation that might be caused, or disruption to public order, versus obviously the right to protest and free speech. And you'll have seen under the existing powers, under the Public Order Act, the police do actually very rarely indeed, ever actually ban a protest, which they can do at the moment.
But they can.
If it's going to cause
exactly.
Serious
They've got
disruption.
the power. They've got the power to do that. And the only reason we don't have serious trouble at these supposedly pro-Palestinian but really pro-Hamas marches is because the police don't go in. They don't tackle people who have got swastikas on. I mean, often they're arrested after the fact. They do very softly policing. They don't put the helmets and the riot shields up like they do for anything that seemed to be on the right. If they were policed in the same way as every other march was policed, where there was potential for threat and mass arrest, it would be very different, wouldn't it? These aren't peaceful marches.
Well, I think wherever anyone at any march, but including the pro-Palestine ones, does anything which is illegal, whether that's inciting racial hatred, whether it's carrying signs that express support for Hamas or any of that stuff, then my view is the police should act on the spot. And I've repeatedly made that point to the Metropolitan Police. I don't think it's good enough to say, I will wait and deal with it later based on CCTV footage. I think they should take action right away. And if at any point they hold back because they're worried about the reaction by the wider crowd, I think that is completely wrong. The police should not be backing off because they're worried about some kind of backlash from the crowd in front of them.
But we know they do. Can I ask you about a Tory policy that's been announced involving deportation? It's a bit of an arms race going on with the Reform Party, trailed by the Labour Party as well, in terms of how many people can we deport a year. Your party leader, Kemi Badenoch, facing a lot of pressure over her leadership. She's saying 150,000 a year. Would that include, and should that include, the father of the Manchester synagogue attacker? That's Jihad al-Shami is the attacker, named Jihad by his father, who was Syrian-born. And the father, Faraj al-Shami, he called the October 7th attackers 2 years ago heroic on the very day of that massacre. Do we want people like that in this country, and should he be deported?
No, we definitely do not want people like that in this country. Glorifying rape and murder is appalling.
So
now,
he would be deported under your rules?
Well, assuming he's not a British citizen. If he is a British citizen, that is obviously different.
Can't we take his British citizenship? He's not born here, he's from Syria. Why can't we take his citizenship away from him?
So it depends if he is. It's a complicated question to do with whether he has dual nationality. But if it is possible to deport him because he is not a British citizen, we should definitely do so. And I said, Julia, very clearly in my speech yesterday that anyone who is not a British citizen, who expresses extremist views, who expresses racial or religious hatred, including anti-Semitism, or expresses support for terrorism, should be deported because they have no place in this country.
And how are you going to do that? There's been lots of criticism of Nigel Farage's plans, so how he's going to deport people. We've got, you know, 1 million plus, I'm sure it's quite a lot more than 1 million, illegal migrants who've arrived here illegally and or overstayed visas. We've got a lot of foreign criminals, even released from prison, we can't deport. What are you actually going to do that means you're going to get rid of these people? Because a lot of my listeners and my viewers are going to be going, we've heard it all before, you're not going to do it. You had 14 years in power, you were in the Home Office for some of that time. You didn't do it then, why do we think you're going to do it now?
Yeah, because we understand the last government made some serious mistakes on immigration, and we understand a very, very radically different approach is needed. So how are we going to do it? We've got a detailed plan around how we're going to do it, which we published in the last 2 days. By the way, Reform does not have a detailed plan, but it will include leaving the ECHR, which prevented the last government, and actually it's preventing the current government as well, from deporting people that shouldn't be here. So we're going to come out of the ECHR, we've got a proper plan to do that. We're going to establish a removals force with double the budget in the Home Office. We're also, and this is really important, we're going to dismantle the entire legal architecture which has allowed illegal immigrants and foreign criminals to stay in this country. So, for example, we're going to completely abolish the Immigration Tribunal. So no longer will immigration judges make these decisions. The Home Office will simply decide internally. We're going to abolish most judicial review for immigration matters, and we're going to completely abolish legal aid for immigration matters as well, so lawyers aren't on this immigration legal aid gravy train. And by doing all of those things, we're removing all the barriers, and we're going to get rid of the Modern Slavery Treaty as well. We're removing all of the barriers which prevent the government from deporting people that shouldn't be here and foreign criminals. And that will enable us, combined with doubling the budget of the removals team, will enable us to remove 150,000 people a year, starting with illegal immigrants who arrive within a week, then all foreign criminals, and then everybody else that's here illegally, which, as you say, is probably well over 1 million people. I
know you've got to go. I've got about 20 seconds, though, because we got you late. Do you understand why a lot of people in my audience will go, oh, that sounds great, Chris Philp, sounds great. We just don't trust you're going to do it.
Well, look, as I said already, Julia, I completely accept, honestly, that the last government made some bad mistakes in this area, let immigration get too high, stayed in the ECHR, and we acknowledge, the Conservative Party under new leadership just honestly acknowledges to you and to your listeners that was a mistake. We've listened, we've understood, we know the last government got it wrong in many areas, and we've now got a plan that isn't only tough, as you'll have heard just now, but we've also done the detailed work that sits behind it, unlike Reform. So we know your listeners and you will know this will actually work in practice.
We'll leave it there. I know you've got to get going. Appreciate your time. Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary. Really brief word of clevis. Your face is a picture then.
I can't help it.
You worked in the Tory government. Do you believe them?
No, I don't.
Don't
believe Chris and his details.
Fair summary, but there we go.